Right. I mean, the sanctions that are being talked about right now that Macron's opposed from Maloney, these are just armed sanctions, right? I mean, really,
Right.
at the end of the day, it's the U.S. that supplies all the military aid.
Right.
So
Yeah,
even if
95% or something like,
right, so
very, very high percentage.
right, so if France and it's a symbolic gesture. It's nice to see, but
Yeah.
really, it doesn't really matter as long as the U.S. is the one that's pumping Israel full of military
And that's
equipment.
that's the way Israel is thinking. Again, I think it's very reckless. They're skating on thin ice. These are rumblings. Nothing much has happened. Like the volcano hasn't erupted yet, but there's rumblings of a real disaster coming from Israel. Even if they do manage some kind of win, it's just that they may actually face real, severe, real sanctions for once from European countries. We're not there yet. Yeah, but we would never have heard these kind of statements from Maloney or Macron or other people, other leaders within the West before.
Right. And just talking about sanctions, it doesn't make sense to me that the world isn't standing up and putting real economic sanctions. We're not just talking about arms embargoes on Israel. I mean, you told me, and we looked it up after it's confirmed that the U.S. and the collective West have sanctioned 1/3 of the countries in the world. 1 out of 3 countries in the world have been sanctioned by the U.S. And it's just because for the most trivial reasons, you look at the U.S. wrong, then the U.S. sanctions you. So we're so ready to sanction everybody. So there's a precedent, right? There's this precedent that okay, that you can sanction somebody, because we're like, oh, you like Pepsi and we're for Coke, we'll sanction you, whatever. That's a terrible example, but you know what I mean. But we think so why I don't understand why countries, for example, like Turkey, an Islamic country that is obviously the population, 99% of the people in Turkey are behind the Palestinians, right? That they are they see them as brothers in arms and suffering. Yet Turkey continues to let oil flow into Israel. Why can't they just stand? Because it would be popular. I mean, we're sanctioning people left and right. Why can't other countries have the gumption to stand up? Because it would be well received. I think it would be a smart political move. And I don't think it would really damage Turkey that much economically. It's not like that oil disappears. Yeah. You would take a hit, sell it to some other country. It just... Right.
I'll tell you, the oil is this kind of a more difficult issue. I looked into it a bit more. The oil, of course, doesn't come from Turkey. It comes from Azerbaijan. And so one thing is just that Turkey can't simply shut it down without getting some sort of agreement from Azerbaijan ahead of time, because it's not just Israel that would suffer a loss, but Azerbaijan would as well. And I think they're not willing to do it. Now, Azerbaijan, I think, is a nominally Muslim country, but they've actually been very close to Israel. I think Israel has supplied them with a lot of arms and other military support.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
So that's part of what's going on. Turkey has too. I mean, they're all together there in Azerbaijan. Now, but other economic sanctions are certainly could be imposed, by Turkey on Israel. There's no question about it. Mm-hmm. And it's just that, we've talked about Erdogan he's a snake. He gives us fiery speeches. He's been doing it all along, and he does it to appeal to his base because he knows how strong the feeling, the sentiments against Israel and for the Palestinians are in his country. He knows it. But he has his secret deals, and who knows, family members and whatever, and so he says one thing and he does another. But there may be a time when he just sees the writings on the wall, and that the anger against Israel is just too great. And then, even if his son's going to lose out on this deal or whatever, he's just like, okay, we got to cut this out. We may find that'll happen. And certainly if Israel went nuclear or whatever, I think, I would think, before then, at some point, we may see some economic sanctions from Turkey.
Yeah, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me because, I mean, you say that Israel has lost the PR war completely. They're the most hated country on the planet now. But yet nobody's doing anything about it.
Yeah.
The only countries...
the problem is that they have the rules-based, international order behind them. It's basically the U.S. and its vassals.
Right.
So,
but that's a small part of the world now.
Yeah, but it's a very powerful.
Increasing...
It's a very powerful part of the world, and those are the people that impose sanctions. I think sanctions should be used in only the most extreme circumstances. But these are the extreme circumstances.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, we've sanctioned a third of the world for no reason whatsoever. And here we have a genocide going on in Gaza. I mean, even if you don't want to...
the U.S. government just will not acknowledge that. And it's just no matter what.
The U.S. government won't, but the rest of the world is. I mean, even if you don't use the term genocide, mass murder, you just want the killing to stop. So,
well, I think what we're seeing is like, this is the old order is still there. Right, it's the so-called rules-based, international order. It's there. What we're saying is Western hegemony. It's still very powerful, and a lot of countries that are now beginning to turn away from the U.S. or at least try to adopt a neutral position where they used to be firmly in the Western camp. They still, these old habits die hard. They still kind of just like we say. Even with all the huge debt and so on in the U.S., there's still this habit, this instinct that we go to the U.S. dollar, whenever economic uncertainty exists. It's supposed to, it just has that aura of safety around it. And the U.S., even though countries are starting to see that, hey, there's some problems here, I better start to hedge my bets, they still tend to look to the West for leadership. But I think that's just that's part of what we're observing here. And that's why these wars are so important. These wars are bringing that to an end. There already have been very important shifts, but that old order hasn't collapsed yet. It's still very, very powerful. That Western hegemony is still there, but it is in the process of collapsing. I believe that very strongly. And when we see, sanctions imposed, against U.S. and Western wishes, that will be a sign that it really is that that the end is near. Let's say, but we're not quite there yet.
It just seems it's hard for me to just fathom how the whole world can be against Israel here, and they want this. Everybody wants this to end. Everybody sees where this is heading. This is heading into a wide regional world. Even if you're pro-Israel. You should be able to see that this is not good for Israel. You wanted to paint that rosy picture where you have a damaged Israel, but Israel's still intact. Well, maybe the best way to do it is to sanction them. So they cut them off so they can't keep this war going because they are destroying themselves in the process. Like, anyway, we talk about this all the time, right? I mean, every time we look at it, it doesn't end well for Israel. Any way you cut it or look at it. So, the quicker that we can just stop the killing, the better for everybody. Israel, better for the region. And so I just don't see why more people won't stand up and try to sanction. I mean, the only people that are standing up are the Houthis and Iran,
Right.
That's it.
Right.
It's
Hezbollah.
And Hezbollah, right? That's it.
Right.
And Hezbollah is not even a state. Hezbollah is an organization. So it's like the
Houthis really aren't a state either. They're not. They're kind of a similar kind of organization.